Warfare is the new A24 movie directed by Alex Garland. It has a cast that's stacked with actors that you've probably seen a lot, but maybe you don't know their names. Up-and-coming actors such as Will Poulter, Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, among others. And this is basically a spiritual sequel to the movie that Alex Garland released last year, Civil War. So Alex Garland is one of those directors like Ari Aster and Robert Eggers that came to fame due to A24. Alex Garland's first movie, Ex Machina, is pretty much a modern masterpiece in my opinion. His follow-up movie, Annihilation, which is an adaptation of Jeff Vandermeer's novel. And then after that, he began making some weird movies. He made Men, which I think is one of my least favorite A24 movies ever. And then last year he made Civil War, a movie that I had conflicting thoughts about. I don't want to dwell on Civil War too much because this is a different review, but I will go ahead and say that the movie had an amazing cast with Kaylee Spaney, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons. It was beautifully shot, but ideologically I had issues with that movie. The whole Civil War premise was just an excuse because the movie only focused on journalism during times of war. So it could have been a war in Iraq, Afghanistan, could have been a war in Gaza. However, Garland chose to make a war movie about a hypothetical civil war that occurs in the United States, and he never really explains what are the ideologies behind each one of these groups. However, most of the action scenes in that movie were pretty thrilling. And that leads us to Warfare. As I said, I think this is a spiritual successor to that movie. Alex Garland wrote this movie with Ray Mendoza, who also worked with him in Civil War. Ray Mendoza is a war veteran, and he helped Alex Garland with the perspective of someone who was in war so that he would make that movie as realistic as possible. Warfare takes this up a notch. In a way, Warfare feels like the logical progression after making a movie like Civil War, because in this movie all the bluff is removed. There is absolutely no characterization whatsoever. Arguably, there is no story either. We just followed this platoon of American soldiers in the city of Ramadi, Iraq, as they are scouting for a house where they can camp. For those of you that have played video games such as Call of Duty and stuff, yes, that type of camping. And they are basically awaiting for their higher-ups on command to tell them what the next move is going to be. Lo and behold, they get raided by a group of Iraqi soldiers. And yep, shit goes to shit. That is a very simple summary of the movie, but I think it's an accurate one. This is not to say that this movie is boring. I actually think the intentions that Garland and Mendoza had creating this movie are very clear. The runtime of the movie, it's about 90 minutes, so it's a pretty short movie. And I would say that this runtime is divided into 3 equally spaced parts. The first 30 minutes of the movie, we are with the platoon in the house, kind of waiting for something to happen. Then on the second part of the story, shit goes down. And then the last 30 minutes or so, another American platoon comes to save them. Yes, it is simple, but it is effective. The number one thing that I've seen critics praising of this movie is the sound design, and for good reason. During the first third of the movie, when we are with the platoon on the house waiting for something to happen, the sound is dead quiet. The silence is so deafening. You can hear the people on the movie theater chewing their popcorns. And so every little sound from the outside of the house is very well captured. There's a point in the movie in which you hear dogs barking, and I kid you not, I thought these dogs were actually outside of my movie theater and something was happening. It creates a very interesting experience, honestly. And I do want to emphasize that because I found the first segment of this movie to be the most exciting one. But I think a lot of people are gonna complain about nothing really happening. However, the tension is brilliant. You know shit is gonna go down. I mean, the movie's called Warfare, so you are expecting to see some people shooting and dying and grenades and explosions and stuff. But 20 minutes into the movie, we are just there with the soldiers and they are just looking through the window with their snipers. But because nothing is really happening and it's dead-ass silence, you feel the tension in your blood. I don't remember the last time I watched a modern movie and I felt so much tension. And then the soldiers get attacked. And the movie goes from 0 to 1,000,000 in terms of intensity. We focus on each one of the soldiers and how each one is dealing with fear, confusion, pain in a different way. We have certain soldiers that after explosions go off, they cannot hear anything. And the audience is basically put in their shoes. Whenever we are shown these particular soldiers, we cannot hear anything but just muffling. A little bit similar to The Sound of Metal in the way that it puts you on the perspective of someone whose hearing is not right at the moment. We have soldiers that lost their limbs and they are just screaming in agony. The shouting and the screams in this movie, they are goosebump inducing. The best praise that I can give this movie is that the sound design is as good as Oppenheimer. Some of the American soldiers in the platoon are, let's say, in command. Will Poulter's character in particular. And you see how he goes from being someone who has his shit together to being someone who is utterly confused. And there is a part of the movie that someone approaches him and begins talking to him about what to do, and he just looks straight at him and says, "Bro, I'm fucked up." That's a type of reaction that I think anyone would have really in a situation like that. But yeah, what I found interesting about this second segment of the story is that you can see the moment, the particular moment in which each one of these soldiers develop PTSD. That's what I think Garland was trying to convey. The amount of soldiers that come back from war and have PTSD is obviously an overwhelming majority. And this movie depicts pretty well how something like that can happen. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how much courage you have. Being put in a situation like this where you are fighting for your life, and on top of that you're confused and in pain, and it looks like the other soldiers in the platoon are doing even worse than you are. This is something that's gonna stay with anyone forever, basically. So yeah, very good depiction of PTSD being developed in real time. Oh, and that's another thing. This movie takes place in real time, and what I mean by that is that there are no time cuts in the movie. So everything is shown to us as it would happen in real time. This can be tough for some people because it makes the pacing slow or deliberate. I do think it had a purpose, and that was to make the audience feel like they were there with the soldiers. So in that sense, 2 thumbs up. The third segment of the movie is when a backup platoon goes to save them, and as I was watching it, I felt a little confused as to why Garland chose to include this part in the movie, because initially it just looks like a team of G.I. Joe came to save our main platoon. Okay, so this is gonna be another Hollywood ending where our heroes get saved. But the more I think about it, there is a purpose to this third segment. It serves as a contrast between the behavior of a group of soldiers that completely lost their shit and another group of soldiers that still have their shit together. But yeah, going back to the sound design, on this third segment, you know, you hear shots and explosions and bullets and the jet plane that flies over the town. That was so cool, by the way. As I mentioned earlier, there is no characterization in the movie. Each and every dialogue spoken by the soldiers is very technical. In most war movies, you have, you know, dialogues about their families, their dreams, aspirations, but this is not really realistic, because when you are in a situation like this, you're not going to be talking about your personal things. No, you're going to be fully in the moment and trying to survive. I think some people might just say this is a realistic exercise in style, and you're not wrong. But when the ending of the movie comes, we are shown a couple of things that I found interesting and purposeful. There are no scenes of our heroes getting back to America with their wives and family. And then the last sequence of the movie before the credits roll in, it's powerful because of its implications. This is when we learn that this is as close as we're gonna get to a war documentary as far as modern warfare is concerned. But yeah, this is a movie that I admire and appreciate and respect more than actually enjoy. It's a visceral movie. It's an experience. But, you know, after the credits roll, I was just like, okay. And yeah, that's why I'm gonna give this movie a 7 out of 10. This is not on the same league as Ex Machina or Annihilation, just because it's missing a little bit of substance, in my opinion. But I will definitely be in the lookout for whatever his next film is. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, hit the like button and all of that jazz, and I will see you guys very soon.